Today we're going to make a bread that's inspired by bread that used to be made in the Iron Age. It has the advantage that you don't have to do a lot of work. It's really fast to do. So just watch this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pour a litre of water, cold water, into our big bowl. Remember to use a big bowl at all times. And you're going to find out why you need a big bowl this time, even though you're not going to be kneading any dough. 1 litre of water and a small amount of yeast, right, into the water. About 15 grams, 10 to 15 grams, that's about half an ounce. You don't need more because this is going to have to leave them for about 10 hours. 10 hours, that sounds scary, doesn't it? But it's not really, because you can go to sleep or to work during those 10 hours. You don't have to sit there and watch it. So let's just make our batter like we usually do. So the yeast has something to hang on to. And then we're going to use a whole lot of exciting stuff to make our Iron Age bread. There we go. And remember what I said about salt. Always use about a teaspoon of salt for every quarter of a litre. So that means we need 4 teaspoons of salt. Give that a bit of a stir around. And now we're ready for the exciting part. We're going to start with 200 grams of wholemeal flour. Right? Wholemeal flour. This stuff is called Graham's flour. So Graham, sorry, I nicked your flour. It's just ordinary wholemeal flour, I think. Stir that up. And then we're going to put in a handful of pumpkin seeds. A good handful. About 50 grams. A handful of sesame seeds. That's about 50 grams too. A handful of sunflower seeds. Actually, you can use any seed you like. I usually use linseed as well, but I've run out of linseed, so I'm going to use poppy seed today. About 30-40 grams of poppy seeds. So you've got about, what have you got? About 200 grams altogether of those 4 seed types. So let's just stir that around. Make sure you don't get too much up on in the edges. There we go. The limits to how much this can be stirred, because it doesn't actually absorb any water. It's just good for you. Now we want some carrots. 200 grams of carrots. Oh no, sorry. I'm supposed to grate carrots. There we go. 200 grams of those. If it's 150, that's fine. If it's 250, that's fine too. The nice thing about bread rolls is they know nothing about mathematics. That's the hard part done. Now, all you need is, in total, about 650 grams of flour, right? 650 grams of flour. I've already put 100 grams in, so I need another 650 minus 100. It's 550 grams. So that's, what would that be? About 1 pound and 3 ounces if you're in North America. Chuck some of that in. Just stir it around. This won't take any time at all, but I'm going to switch off, and because there are limits to how exciting this can be. So go watch something else. See how it's coming along? It's a bit wet. Yeah, so I'm going to put in a bit more flour. I've only got about 60 grams left, about 2 ounces. So I'm going to use a little bit more wholemeal flour. There we go. Just try and get a look at the consistency of this stuff. If you find that your bread isn't turning out the way that my bread turns out, it's probably because you're using a different flour. Flour is very, very varied in gluten content. And because it's varied in gluten content, sometimes you need, as in my case, about 650 grams of flour for this. Let's say it's for this. Sometimes you need up to 20% more. So it's good that we're on video because you can see sort of more or less the consistency of it. Can you see that? That's about right. So we're done. We don't need more than this. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's not going to be very easy to turn into bread rolls. You're quite right. It's going to be really hard to shape into bread rolls. But we're not going to shape it into bread rolls. Now we're going to put it in the fridge. But before we put it in the fridge, we're going to pour a little oil on it. There we go. And we're going to paint it with oil. There we go. Oh, lovely that. Right. So it's just covered with oil so that we don't lose too much of the moisture. Now let's go out to the fridge. Oh yeah. Put a lid on it. Right. As you can see, it's doubled, just about doubled in size. And it's still, you can see, a little fluid. So now get yourself a little bowl, put some oil in it, get a tablespoon, oil it, and start portioning out dollops of dough on your baking pan. If you're Australian, you'll probably recognise this as damper. Well, it's a lot like damper. Then chuck them in the oven, 200 degrees, 35 minutes. If you don't like your rolls quite so flat, you can also use a muffin pan. Then when you think you've baked enough, you just put the lid back on, put it in the fridge. I'm not going to be baking the rest of this until about 3 days from now. Have a look at that. Beautiful Iron Age rolls. And the muffin ones turned out just as good.